Let me check.
Hi, and welcome to Live Chat with Linda. My name is Linda Kvist, and I'm in Sweden. And I would like to say very warm welcome to Evert-Jan Blom, who's my guest today. How are you doing?
Hey, yeah, I'm doing well. Just finished eating my dinner. Looking forward to this talk.
Yeah, great. So the first question I always ask is, because there's a lot of people into genealogy and family history research, so we want to know, where are you at and where did your ancestors come from?
Very good question. I actually pulled up my ancestry tree to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. I think I'm mainly from the north of the Netherlands, so from Frisian. To be more precise, 7/8 of my lines are from Frisian province, and the other line is from Groningen. So it's the north part of the Netherlands. Yeah. So very, very Dutch.
Yeah, very Dutch. So I have never done any genealogy in the Netherlands. How do you have good records, and is it easy or is it really, really hard or?
Yeah, I must admit that when I started doing genealogy, I tried to do it as quickly as possible because I was working with an adoptee at that moment. So we wanted to have answers. And I was lucky to have two uncles on both sides of the family who already did some genealogy. So I requested information from both sides and I did some DNA testing. And that was more or less the basis of my whole genealogy era. I didn't really do much stuff myself. But the records that I have used are pretty nice. So the digital records here are pretty okay. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And you mentioned you took a DNA test. When did you take your first DNA test?
I think I have it in my about page. Was it around? I think it was a couple of years after 23andMe launched their health tests. So I think that was 2013, and then maybe a few years later. And then I was contacted by somebody who shared, I think, a single segment of 20 centimorgans. And I was like, wow, let's figure it out. Let's figure that out. So, and I didn't have any trees. So then I started building my tree. And I remember that I started building my tree during the pregnancy of my third child, because my wife was going to bed very early. So I had lots of time in the evening. So I assembled the trees, and then we also tested my mom to see if we tested my dad to see if he was on his side, and he was not on his side, so we assumed it was on my mother's side. And then we actually tracked down some descendants of my ancestors, and we did some targeted testing to see if we had found the appropriate line, and we didn't. So I couldn't find the link with him. But after a while, some years later, he did find some close relatives via ancestry, and then he did track down his biological parents. And they were both deceased, but I think he has two siblings, two sisters that are still alive. So that's very nice.
Okay, so he was adopted and he didn't know his parents, or
Yeah.
yeah.
And half of this, his paternal line was Dutch, so that was the link with me, and his maternal line was had colonial roots from the USA. Yeah, and I actually used his data throughout the whole Genetic Affairs website, anonymized, but because his USA roots are so deep and nice, so he had very nice results in the clustering, very nice results in the auto tree, auto pedigree. So I've used that data quite a lot.
Yeah, because we are going to talk about that now, because you have developed Genetic Affairs. It's a page where you have a lot of different tools. So how did you get into that? And tell us more about the tools you have.
Yeah, so I started doing the trees for the adoptee, and then I had tested quite some of my descendants, and I had tested some of my family members, and after a while, I don't know, I had several profiles on various websites of Family Tree, DNA, Ancestry, 23andMe, JetMatch, and then I was really fed up checking every website every week or day or month to see if I had new matches. So I thought maybe I could automate this. So that's why I decided to build the website, to make one mailing device to inform me about new matches. So that was actually the primary goal of Genetic Affairs, and that's how it all started. And during the development, so in the more or less in the final stage of the development, I also so I was of course keeping track of all the new stuff in the field, and then the leads methodology came around, and I was also downloading chat matches and the matches. So then I thought maybe I could do something with the leads methods, doing some clustering myself. So then I looked into some methods to do some clustering and to do some visualization. And then I found a nice match, a good clustering analysis, and a nice visualization. And the two combined led to the auto cluster tool. So that really made the website much more popular. So the auto scan, so the scanning of new matches was interesting, but not that nice. And then the auto cluster was really something people started to appreciate and to use a lot.
Yeah, because I remember when I saw like the first couple of times when we got the email and you opened up and you saw all these dots, and then suddenly it all just came together, and that's like wow.
I must admit I'm still looking into the so if I open those things, and I've opened like hundreds, thousands, I usually wait and check the results. Yeah, so it's still mesmerizing. It's still nice to see, and I think it adds a little bit to the magic of the clustering analysis, right? Because it's first you see everything unsorted, and then everything is then sorted. So that's nice.
Yeah, that's really a wow factor. So I just want to say hello to everyone's watching, because they have
who are watching.
Yeah, we have Maria from Stockholm, and we have Eva, and we have Rolf from Norway, and we have Colleen from Oklahoma, and we have Michael from UK, and Torgny from Malmö, Anna-Karin from Växjö, Magnus, or Pat from Texas, and a lot of people. So really nice to see you. And if you have any questions, just write them in the comments. And
now is the time.
Yep, exactly. So, do you have like a program background, or how did you get this idea? What kind of background do you have?
Well, my background is in biology. I started my studies in '97, and then I didn't have any training in computer science. Then when I started doing my PhD, I actually started doing some programming in Java, and that's how I started doing the programming. So my programming skills are quite limited to the Java programming tool, but that's until now has been sufficient. And then I well, usually when I need to use stuff, well, I just dive in. I try to use it, or I team up with people like Johnny Pearl. He has some nice visualizations from the Wado website, and then I use that as a basis. It's of course much more efficient if there's already something lying around that you can use and reuse, instead of developing everything from scratch. Yeah, so I try to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah, but you have also the background in biology, so you
Yeah.
know like how the genetics works really deep.
Yeah.
Nice. So, do you want to show a little bit how it works, or guide us?
Yeah, I think. Well, I have some screens. I think most folks probably know those things already, but maybe share some things. Let's share my Chrome. Let's see if this works.
So it's always nice to see the developers show their tools, because sometimes there's something that we haven't really understood, and then wow, that's how it should be done.
Yeah, well, this is more or less the stuff that I have also posted on my so these of course are the typical clusters from the outer cluster. You see here the common ancestors in the little trees. They were gray here, but nowadays they are green. But if they get very small, it's hard to see. And of course, when you have the reconstructed trees, you get stuff like this. Now it is slightly changed because I don't put in the badge of the common ancestor anymore. So you can see the tree right now, right?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, so these are the reconstructed trees. So we actually started out with the nice clusters, and then a very logical thing to come up with the additional analysis of the clusters is to do some more mining of the matches and the trees that are associated with the matches. And we actually, so I developed the auto tree, and let's see if this one is even better. Oh yeah, so here, this is a nice example. So you see the different matches here, and also if you have a tree of your own, it will just treat yourself as an ordinary tree person. So it works with and without yourself. So that also is nice for people that don't know their biological parents or their biological background. And also after a while, we integrated. Well, that was just before the whole ancestry stuff. But we downloaded the unlinked trees and the true line data from Ancestry. So here, I think in orange, you see the orange yellow, you see the unlinked tree from Ancestry. So that was pretty nice.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have people that have linked there, so they have trees available, but they didn't link it to a DNA match. So it could still potentially hold their data, but you just have to examine that. So we took that along, and that turned out pretty well. Let's see, do I have my ancestry view here? No, we have some more updates over here. And I think the latest thing, which was from the which was a couple of months ago, is the auto pedigree, which is basically a combination of auto tree and the Wado. So you have the auto trees, and then it tries to find your place in the tree using the probabilities that are also used in Wado. So it tests several hypotheses. And I think this option is nowadays also present in the new version of Wado. You can just use it there, but here it combined the data from the auto tree, and it tried to find the best scenario where you fit the best. So that could already help you locate yourself in a tree if you don't know where your position in a tree is. So that was nice. I don't have something from the. Let's see if I can pull it up on the website. I have some new stuff developed. The auto tree for Y data. So these are this is the ancestry data. So you have the common ancestors superimposed on the ancestors, which is nice. Let's see because normally I don't update my website that often. I don't have it here, but nowadays we also do auto tree for Y data. So you have your Y DNA tested, and some folks, I personally, so I only have like 2 matches at 25 SDR markers, but some folks really have a lot of matches. And then to quickly find out the common ancestors in those matches can be tedious. So by doing the auto tree on the Y data, and also it's also available for mitochondrial DNA, you can quickly find out which are the common ancestors in these data sets. So that's nice.
Yeah, that's nice, because I have seen a lot of tools for the autosomal DNA, but not so many for Y DNA or for mtDNA.
I actually was, I think Roberta from the DNA Explained, Roberta Estes, she asked me if I could make something about the auto tree for Y data and mitochondrial DNA. So I actually get a lot of my input from users because they are a good, nice inspiration for the tool. And this is the last tool. This is like a generic tool to do your clustering. Have you already seen it? The auto fast cluster?
I have just seen a small. Yeah, I haven't tried it.
Yeah, so basically you put in your matches here and your shared matches. So these are the matches, your shared matches, and then you click start, and then it returns the cluster in a couple of seconds. Well, it's also nice. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's a snapshot of the latest things. I'm glad I pushed out the auto fast cluster because I'm going on holidays this Sunday. So and it's nice that it's working and not crashing all the time.
Yeah, great. But if there's someone here who doesn't know what is a cluster?
Yeah. So what is a cluster? So typically, if you get your DNA results from a DNA testing company, you get those large lists. So, and these are usually ranked on the amount of genetic material that you share with those persons. So the highest centimorgans, so the people that you share the most centimorgans, so the most genetic data with, are in the top. But if you would like to examine those data sets, it's pretty difficult because who do you compare against who? Because what are the familial, the family relationships between those people? And by taking the shared matches that you have, that you have at those matches, you can find structures in your data that resembles groups of people that you probably have a common ancestor with. Or the people in those clusters. The people in a cluster have a high probability of having a shared ancestor, and that already makes it much more easy. Instead of having to analyze the whole, so those large thousands and thousands of matches, you just focus on the groups of matches in your data, and that makes it much easier.
Yeah, I think sometimes you see that. That perhaps the ideal, I don't know if that's the ideal, that you get 4 clusters. That one is from your paternal grandmother, another from the grandfather, and then from the maternal grandmother and grandfather. That's like, wow, if I get those 4 clusters, then I know exactly on what line to look. But we never get it that perfect, do we?
No. Well, I think there must be people out there that have those data, but usually it's not as nice as that. And but it's a nice strategy if you first focus on the high centimorgan matches, and then use that as anchor points. I think Jim Bartlett, in his Walking the Clusters back or something like that, he describes how to do this. So you have your your clusters based on your high centimorgan matches, and then you decrease the minimum centimorgan threshold so that you get more fine cluster results. But you can still go back to the original large clusters and use this as anchor points to see where they end up. So it allows you to find more structure in your clustering results.
Yeah, because there's sometimes people ask, well, what values should I put in? But that is very individual. You really have to try large number and try smaller number and see where your perfect numbers are, and then work from that.
Yeah, I think I have on the website, it's typically set on 250 as a top and the 50 as the lower value. But I think it's best for people to examine their data and to see, okay, how many matches do I have within this range? If I only have 17 matches within the 250-50 range, it's maybe better to decrease the lower value. Otherwise, you end up with a very, very small clustering. Yeah. So it's always good good to examine your results first.
Yeah. So does your tools, do they look on the segments, or do they look on the share matching?
The shared match only for the clustering, but we do incorporate the segments from Family Tree DNA and 23andMe because these are the only ones left. We do take those data into account, and I do some segment clustering as well. But the segments are primarily used to annotate the members of a cluster such that they can be integrated into DNA Painter more easily. So DNA Painter has now this tool, this option to import the HTML from Genetic Affairs. And if you have done the analysis for 23andMe or Family Tree DNA and you've enabled the segment option, then the segments that are linked to your data, so linked to your matches, are incorporated into the HTML. And that allows you to quickly import them into DNA Painter and to examine them.
Yeah, and I have tried that, and usually you see how the segments, they line up very, very nicely under each other for each cluster, so you can really see that they belong to each other.
Yeah, I think I also have a very basic chromosome browser integrated within that data, so you can see the segments per cluster and also combined. And if you look at the combined set, you see the whole, so you see more or less your whole genome covered with segments, very colorful segments. So, but the segments are typically used to annotate the matches and not as a primary source of clustering.
Yeah, so we have a question here actually, so I will put it up here. And Anna-Karin asked, is there a way to automatically do, for example, cluster of my first cousins and my common DNA matches?
Yes, there is. So, of course, if it's for ancestry, no. But if it's for 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, yes. So we were actually looking into this because people were often interested in one or a couple of very high centimorgan matches, and then they were interested in only finding out the data for that particular data for that data set. And it is possible to specify one or a couple of matches, and then the tool will download the shared matches of those interesting matches that you have specified. And then of those shared matches, we download the shared matches again. And then we do the clustering. And if you do this, you will see a very, if you have good data, you will see some very nice clusters, which are very specifically focused on that particular high centimorgan cousin. So it's a very focused analysis. And we used, that was called group clustering, because it was originally meant for the ancestry groups, because people were using the groups in ancestry, and then combined with the extended cluster feature, which was very powerful because it allows you to really focus your analysis. So instead of doing the clustering for all matches, which is, well, given my infrastructure, difficult because I don't have so much time on my clusters, it's much better to have a broad clustering first and then to do some more targeted clustering. So that's possible, and it's I think it's on page 18. Well, that was I think before, so maybe somewhere around that. It's in the manual website. Group-like clustering, and so you can use the identifiers from Family Tree DNA and 23andMe to specify which matches should be it should start with.
Yeah, because on the website you can do the clustering to Family Tree DNA. Most Swedes tested with Family Tree DNA, I think.
Yeah.
And you can also do at 23andMe and now Living DNA as well, right?
Yeah, so the living DNA was more like a proof of concept. So the underlying method is also generic. So it's based on CSV files, and these results are still mailed, but this is generic. So you can put in every data that you have.
Okay.
It can also be of other sources like jet match or something else.
Yeah.
And the new auto-fast cluster is also generic, so you can put in everything. It also allows you to combine data from different sources. So if you have nice matches for 23andMe and other matches from MyHeritage, you can combine them into one clustering.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And then the tool is the one we find if we have tested with MyHeritage. That's your tool also, auto cluster.
Yeah. It's slightly different because the for MyHeritage they wanted to have more or less a consistent output for most users. Because if you let the users decide to use to specify their own centimorgan range, they will get very different results. So for one range would work for somebody, but which would not work for somebody else. So one guy would have 2 clusters, and somebody else with the same range would have like 1,000 matches and would have an unreadable chart. So we did some more. I did some more work for MyHeritage to make sure that we ended up with approximately 120 matches as an end result for the final clustering. Most members of the Genetic Affairs website, they are more happy to use are more happy with the ability to define their own thresholds. But from a MyHeritage perspective, of course, it's much better to have one consistent output for everybody, and that's why I test multiple ranges of centimorgan. Actually, I take into account the up and the down, so the min and the max of the match, but also the shared match between matches, so the shared centimorgan between matches. And I test like a whole range of different settings, and based on that, I pick the ones that are most close to like 100, 120, and that's the final clustering result being used, and that's being returned to the user.
Yeah. And then if you have a tier 1 subscription on GEDmatch, that is also your tool that can be found there. So
and they of course have heavily modified it, so it's more like an interactive auto cluster. So they supply the shared match data together with the match data, and they send it to my code. I do the clustering, I return the cluster results, and then they integrate it within their own modified analysis. And the nice thing on GEDmatch is that you can select data in the clustering and then do some additional things with it. So you can focus on a certain group to see if you have, so what are the shared segments underneath this particular analysis, or maybe do some other cool tricks. So it's more interactive because everything is contained within the same infrastructure.
Yeah. So we have a couple of more questions. We have one from Ken.
Hey, Graham.
Yeah, it's for you, he says. Have you found newer approaches on auto clusters for endogamous populations?
Not really. So because of the underlying technical approach I was using for auto cluster and still am using, it means that I can only run for a certain amount of time on the cloud. And the side effect of people for endogamous populations is that they usually have lots of shared matches. So they have high centimorgan matches and a lot of shared matches. So it takes a lot of time to get the data into the program, and then usually the time is already limited. So I don't have much time to get a lot of data. So that's also the reason why people that are from these populations don't really get many clusters, and the ones that they get are quite linked. I think for these kind of approaches, for people with that background, with these backgrounds, it's much better to have a very long download of most matches, which allows you to have more filtering and more tweaking of the data. The only thing that you could use for family tree DNA, for instance, you could raise the minimum segment length to a certain level, which also will maybe improve the clustering. And for 23andMe, you could raise the shared centimorgan value that is needed to between matches. So, for instance, I think by default they have 5 centimorgan, and on Ancestry it's, for instance, 20. But you can specify it for 23andMe. So if you raise that, then the clustering results also get a little bit better. Yeah.
So, and we got a question from Ove as well. I don't know who my maternal grandfather is. My biological mom is dead since the mid-1990s, so no way getting DNA sample there. Is there a chance that your tool could help me in the right direction?
Yeah. So if Uwe doesn't have any other data sources as himself, he could still do the clustering. The only thing is that he should spend time to link all of those clusters to his ancestors, and the ones that are left are the ones that are the ones that he cannot link to the tree that he has already from his ancestors. And the ones that then are left out, so the ones that cannot be linked to history, are the ones that are the most likely candidates to be linked to his unknown biological, his maternal grandfather. So yes, if he has some data, so for instance, he's interested in his maternal line. So if he has some paternal data, so for instance, if he has tested his dad, then he could still use this data to do a rule-based analysis or group-based analysis to subtract these data points, and then to only be left with the maternal data. So that allows you to have a more focused analysis as well. So the group analysis, like with the first cousin match that we discussed before, so you can also do the opposite. So instead of only focusing on that, you can also take them away. So you can focus on your paternal or maternal line, or you can discard a certain branch that you're not interested in. So by playing around it, you can be more selective, and you can focus on these things.
Yeah, that's a nice strategy, because if there is a line that is unknown, then you have to really focus on everything that you know, so you can remove that and then concentrate on what's left.
If I were him, I would focus on the clusters that are unknown, and then do a new analysis with the members of that cluster, with the extend cluster feeds. It's maybe pulling in more data, and then you may have more leads.
So, and we got the question from Åsa. It's, do you think in your wildest fantasy that the science will find something better for genealogy than DNA in the future? Or is the way to find out more how to analyze the DNA data? What is your best wish to what an analyze can do in the future?
Better than DNA. Wow, that's going to be interesting. I don't know. Maybe
a time machine.
A time machine.
Yeah.
Maybe epigenetics will. Maybe that will have some component in there, but I don't know. I think having maybe a more refined set of data. So nowadays, DNA testing companies, they test around like 500 to 800,000 SNPs. If you test more data, maybe you could have more detailed analysis on your data sets. If you would have whole sequence analysis, whole genome sequence analysis for everybody, instead of only having these SNPs. I don't know. Not really my area of expertise, but I could imagine that you could do some more with that, as opposed to only having the SNPs, only having the SNP data. And the other question was, or is the way to find out more how to analyze the DNA data? Well, nowadays, these companies, of course, it would be nice to have an API for all companies instead of having to scrape them. And of course, the companies, so they all have something that is lacking in one. For instance, Ancestry is lacking segment data. Ancestry and family tree DNA, they don't share how much centimorgan is shared between shared matches, which is available on MyHeritage, on ZMatch, and on 23andMe. 23andMe doesn't have trees, so all of them have something that they lack. Maybe MyHeritage has segments, has trees. Well, maybe MyHeritage is the exception then. But That would be nice if they would all take that data into account instead of only using the raw centimorgans. There's probably much more to do with the data than what is being done now. But I think the testing companies are probably afraid that, and probably for good reason, that not all customers will understand or appreciate the more advanced tools. So you have to be careful as a company to have if you have a new tool, that it has to be intuitive and it can be understood by most people. Otherwise, it's of no use. If you make a tool that is only being used by like 0.1% of the whole population of your members, then it's not really a good tool.
Yeah, and just for people that don't know what an API is, could you just say a couple of words? What is an API?
API. So an API is a nice way for external programmers to make tools based on data. So actually 23andMe had an API available. And I think just a couple of months before I launched my website, they stopped it. And I was using it. So that was quite annoying. But it was a formal way of telling so you could go to a tool, so you could give access to a tool to use your data without having you to share your password and stuff like that. So that was a very nice way. And also usually it's much more effective and efficient for the underlying service for that company to use API to provide data instead of using scraping method tools. So it's a nice way of getting data.
Yeah, we got a comment from Rolf. He says face data.
Yeah, that would be nice. I think, of course, it's possible within JetMatch to use that. That's the only one, right? Yeah. You can use face data.
So we got a question from last week's guest as well. It kind of was very similar to Åsa's question, but last week we had Peter Sjölund, who was the guest. So I'm gonna play his question and you will get to answer it.
If you had no restrictions, what would be your absolute dream tool to develop when it comes to genetic genealogy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would love to have the data available like now we have the trees from Ancestry, the segments from family tree DNA and the Y and the mitochondrial data, and the shared centimorgans between matches as being done on 23andMe and MyHeritage. And then use that information to predict the genetic trees based on DNA supplemented with tree data. So it's quite similar to the genetic family approach on 23andMe, yeah, because that is also only using DNA data to predict the family trees, but combine everything into one. And basically making a tree, if you have good matches, making a tree of your data and seeing all the predicted relationships in there. Basically having an automated method to do all of the work that we are doing now manually. So that's more or less my motto, right? So doing stuff more quicker and more efficient. Yeah, so having that done.
Yeah, cross platform from all the databases. Right.
That would be even better. But yeah, that's going to take a long time to yeah, that would be nice.
So we'll see where we are in like a couple of years. What happened, because everything happens really fast, I think, and I think it's so great that people like you who are developers, you get your result and you look at it and you think, well, this takes too much time. I'm gonna do an automation, and then you share it with all of us that can't make those great tools.
Yeah,
and I think that's fantastic, because the good tools comes from developers, and perhaps not so much from the testing companies. They have great tools, but yeah, you do great stuff.
Thanks. I like that perspective, and if only testing companies would have shared that same perspective as well, then I will be quite happy. No, yeah, it's. I think it's worthwhile to automate those things as much as possible, because usually there's much more data inside those big data sets as we can analyze ourselves. So we can usually find the more obvious clusters using manual methodologies and doing it ourselves. But if you have so many data sets, so I think some people have like 100,000 DNA matches on Ancestry. It's impossible to analyze those manually. It's just impossible. So that would be, yeah, it's such a waste to just have that as a simple list and not being able to do something about it. So of course, Ancestry themselves, they are doing the analysis. So they're looking at, so making a huge graph and finding the relationships and doing the genetic communities analysis. So they are using it. But we as consumers, we should also be allowed to be able to do the analysis. Otherwise, we are stuck. And we are stuck doing the analysis manually, which takes so much time. And all that time is, wasted.
Yeah, because we pay, perhaps the tests are cheaper now, but I paid a lot of money for my test when I did it. And a lot of people, they see a commercial and they do a test, and then they are a bit disappointed because they don't understand what it means, and they feels like they wasted some money.
Yeah, but I think the tests themselves are not that expensive. I think the testing companies, they probably make the most money from the subscriptions. So from that perspective, I can imagine that testing companies would rather have you work with lists of data instead of condensed and more refined, analyzed data sets, because that would produce answers way too quickly. Right? It's much more economical from a company perspective to have people lurking around, browsing through those endless lists and doing those analysis manually, taking weeks, months, years, than to have a method available that produces the results in seconds, right?
Yeah, I have, and that's where I think a lot of people, they are disappointed because they didn't realize how much time it would take. And I had a comment here. I had tried to analyze my matches manually, and I got mad in the process.
Yeah, well, I have to admit, I started doing the. I don't think I've ever finished the manual analysis. I didn't. I just couldn't bring myself up to. No, I never. I spent all of my time just to find ways to get around it, to do it more efficient.
Yeah. And we got another question here from Torgen. How could criminal people use your tool, your fantasy or fear?
They should be feared, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe the question should be, how could criminal people be caught?
Be found, yeah.
Well, so I think nowadays in the USA, many cases are, of course, being solved by using genetic genealogy tools, and I think that's pretty interesting to have a hobby. Well, yeah, it's more or less a hobby area that is being transformed into a business to solve cases, right? And we've also seen some nice results in Sweden the last couple of weeks. I think even some very high profile cases.
Yes.
So I think if you can do that on the right way and using the right methods and the right data sets, I think criminals should be worried that by using those tools, by using these data sets, they should be should be easy to catch them.
Yeah.
So you think the testing companies are only in it for the money? These are not non-profit companies, eh? So these are so that's a question of Michael Shade asking if I think that companies are in it for the money. So they have to make a living. So I get that. So it's a balance of giving the customers enough new tools and new gadgets to be satisfied. But not too much, because then they get the answers too quickly, and then they are finished. So I do think companies are capable of doing. Look, if I'm able to come up with those things in my evening hours, then those smart people at Ancestry or other companies should be able to come up with the same stuff and even better during their working hours, right?
Exactly. So let's see here. Knowing what you do now, what would you change your HTML file if you were starting from the beginning?
I would invest some more time in learning JavaScript, Graham, I think. Knowing what I know now. Well, I think the HTML output. I think the visualization because it's a visualization that is what that I found online, and I thought it would be nice. It would be a nice match with the data that I produce myself, and it also happened to be a good fit. So I think with respect to the visualization, I wouldn't change a thing. Also, the fact that into one HTML and later on some additional HTMLs with the auto tree and the auto pedigree, so I had to zip my results. Maybe I would have made a link to an offline storage system, because I had quite some difficulties getting the results mailed to people in the beginning, because I did not compress them. So in the beginning, those files could become quite large. So I could probably invest more time to make them smaller. And then in the beginning, a lot of people did not get their results because the email providers just didn't accept those large attachments. Only when I started compressing those files into zip files that they came through, because then they were quite smaller. So maybe getting them into a zip format, smaller format, would have been much more beneficial. Yeah, but there's always a balance there. So if you spend a lot of time testing and tweaking your tool, the chances are that you're being scooped by other approaches. So I usually tend to publish my tools quite quickly, because I'm always afraid that somebody else will come up with the same idea and be quicker than I am. And if I wouldn't have done that, so if I would have been more like a perfectionist, I wouldn't have been the first to come up with many of the tools. So it's a balance.
Yeah.
And if you are a single person company like mine, and it's doable to do those things quickly, and otherwise things are getting too slow and you have to synchronize with all the different departments. But still now it's going fine.
Yeah, and if people want to find your page, it's geneticaffairs.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about it earlier about the server and how long it takes, and of course you have to pay money for doing all the operations, right?
Yeah,
you have to pay money for the server time, right?
Yeah. So I'm hosting everything in the cloud, on the AWS cloud, and that costs money. But the nice thing is that it's pretty stable. So I don't think I have, knock on wood, I didn't have any downtime yet. And also the underlying systems that I employ are also quite scalable. So I don't have to worry about capacity. That's also so that's also dangerous, because in the beginning it was a little bit getting too popular, and then too many people were downloading the results from Ancestry. So I had to put in some measures to to manage those parallel downloads. So, but then I could really have it tweaked such that it was only a small number of people getting their results. So I think it's a good system, having stuff on the cloud.
Yeah, because if someone haven't tried it yet and they sign up now, they will have you can like buy credits. So you can do the analysis, and when you first sign up, you get a amount of credits for free, but then you have to start paying for it, right?
Yeah, so you get 200 credits for free, which is enough for 4 family tree DNA analysis, or 8 23andMe, or 4 if you go higher in the centimorgan, so if you have more matches. So that's it's like some freebies, correct?
Yeah.
So if you do it smart, you can get your results for your own account within the free credits. So that's doable.
And today I have bought credits a couple of times because it's so fun, and then you're suddenly out of credits, so you have to buy some more. So today I bought some more credits, and I saw that you have put up a subscription system as well, because I don't think that was from the beginning. So you pay.
So I made a distinction between people that have purchased credits. They have slightly more. Well, they have more options. So they can, for instance, the auto pedigree was the first tool that is only available for people outside their free tier. So I think for almost 1.5 years, you could do every tool, every setting within your free tier. And maybe from a website perspective, that wasn't the smartest thing to do, but well, anyway. But now, if you sign up, so you're able to do the standard analysis for free. And if you want to have the more advanced stuff, then you have to be outside your free tier. So that's the distinction that I'm now making. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So I just want to put up a comment here from Pat. Thanks for being such a responsive developer, EJ. You have helped me immensely, but you know that already.
Yeah, I think Pat was the one that came up with the idea. I was sitting next to Pat. She was, I think, the first genetic affairs user that I encountered on RootStack when I developed the MyHeritage auto clusters. And she was nagging me to implement the ancestry start matches, I think, or maybe the start matches, because we didn't have groups. So she wanted to have the analysis for start matches for her Irish lines. So I finally gave in, and then I developed the analysis so that you could do the analysis for start matches, and that was already quite successful. And then then the groups came by, and then people started using groups, and then somebody else came up with the idea, maybe we can take that as a starting point and then go one layer deeper. So the extend cluster feature. So I implemented that, and that really, that synergy with users that come up with new ideas is very nice. Because I myself, I don't do so many clustering analysis on my own data. I don't have time for that. No, I don't. So I hardly do any genealogy. Well, almost none. So I don't do anything exciting from my own data. So I do the test analysis. So I look if it makes sense, but I don't do any more detailed analysis.
Yeah, and we got Åsa, who said thanks for this great tool as well. I know there are a lot of people that really loves the tools that you're making.
Yeah.
And we got a question from Rolf. Beside your own tool, which tool should people be people's radar?
I think the obvious tools. I think if you go to a DNA Painter website, the shared centimorgan, the Wado, the DNA Painter itself is also a great tool. I think that's the core, I would say. I think that's also quite accessible. Because Johnny made a very nice job of getting the interface very easy, very user intuitive, and so that makes it very easy. Yeah.
Great, and we got some
Happy
more
parade.
happy comments. Yeah. Great. So, but I was also a tech question as well, because what tools do you use yourself? What's your favorite tool?
Well, like I said, I'm not doing I'm not doing much of my own stuff because I'm way too busy just maintaining, talking with lawyers, and making new. So usually I have new stuff in my head that I want to develop as quickly as possible. So I have some new things in my head I want to push out as quickly as possible, and that's just keep nagging. That's just a little voice that keeps on nagging me until I give in. And then so I don't have much time to use other tools. So of course I use the stuff from the shared Centimorgan and I used Wado a couple of times, but only because I had something similar. It's my own genealogy genealogy journey is pretty boring. So I mainly do the developing.
Yeah.
That's all the time I have. Yeah.
So we got Ken. He says Kevin Borland's tools as well.
Kevin Borland's tools will also be in the upcoming family history conference. That is, I think, in the 16th of August. And together with Kevin, myself, and two other folks, we'll be giving some presentations about several tools. So, for instance, there's stuff like that also Kevin made about the reconstruction of tools. I didn't make. That's the one. That's interesting. So I haven't done anything about that. So I think one of your questions is also something about that people don't know about me.
Yeah, you have know the questions. So tell me something that most people don't know.
Well, maybe a nice bridge. So I didn't do anything with DNA Painter because I know beforehand that I will get addicted to stuff like that because I'm really highly susceptible to collecting digital stuff so I know for sure once I get started painting my segments, it will take too much time. So I'm keeping that for when I'm retired or when I have more time, but I can't do it now. It's too addictive.
It is very addictive.
Yeah.
So for the next week, you will also get to pass on the question.
Yeah. So I heard that the people that will be in the next week chat do have some background in mitochondrial and Y DNA data. So my question is maybe a little bit in line and a little bit biased, but have they already looked into the auto tree analysis? So finding common ancestors for mitochondrial DNA matches and Y DNA matches, and if so, did they find it useful?
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So, have we got any more questions from our viewers that have been? It's been really nice to have all with us today.
I think so. No,
I don't think so. Well,
perfect.
So is EJ the name to call you, or I think I heard it sometime someone said EJ.
I shall pronounce it in Dutch, right? And then you can decide if you are capable of doing it. It's called Evert-Jan.
Evert-Jan?
Yeah, it's pretty. But most US and English people just call me EJ because they are not familiar with those. With the pronunciation. Is Evert? Is it also a Swedish name?
Yeah, this could typically be a Swedish name, but perhaps then it would be Jan Evert instead, the other way around.
Oh yeah.
But it's very Swedish sounding, so.
Very good. Yeah, I could hear that.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay.
So nice having you here, and thank you for everyone that's been watching, and have a nice evening, and see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for this. Bye.
Vad gör det att skymningen breder Sitt flor hon är tankarnas vän. Vad gör det att solen går neder, då den kommer i morgon igen?